Hey guys, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is going to be the Game Week 35 team selection. I've got a lot of transfer plans for my mind this week, but let's actually quickly review with Game Week 34 and see how things rounded out. I actually got 124 points in the end, and I had two transfer plans last week, right? It was either to go out of Grealish and to keep Fernandes and get Solanke, or I would keep Grealish in my team and go Fernandes out and go for Isak. I went for that second variation, and of course that left me net 5 points down, but I think I was quite happy in the sense that Grealish had plenty of chances to do well, and of course Bruno himself, he scored and had a fantastic game versus Villa when it came down to FPL, and Grealish probably didn't take the best of his chances when he had plenty of opportunities versus Leno, and then also in the West Ham game outside of the assist that he got for the record-breaking goal for Haaland. So as far as my team this week, though, McAllister was a huge savior again. Steele was very good in the sense that he matched Estupinian for a lot of owners. Trent and Shaw, very standard picks, but I think Shaw, of course, still did well in terms of getting a clean sheet. Probably something that we didn't expect because ultimately Shaw had the same amount of points as City, and you'd probably have said that the City games were much better on paper from a defensive point of view, and United were pretty unlucky, let's be honest, to concede at the final minute of the game. Trippier, disappointing once again, and that's a consideration point for next week because I think a lot of managers are going to be thinking about Trippier versus Shaw and whether they actually play Trippier this week after a lot of disappointment recently. And of course, a Newcastle at home game. Salah, Rashford, all pretty standard. Even Matoma, I would say, had plenty of opportunities versus United. But of course, the benching, and which included McAllister in the first game round, was quite a surprise. Although, now that it's happened, I'm not really opposed to Matoma and McAllister being transfers out. I think we should expect that this benching could happen again, but I would not be too scared about Mitoma and McAllister's positions in our team. I still think that they're better options than some of the other attackers that you could possibly pick. Now, of course, this wasn't the case for this week, but if you have to look at the context of the season so far, how well Mitoma has done, how well McAllister has done, of course, the strength of being a penalty taker as well, which of course proved handy for someone like Salah as well, who did well for that reason. And of course, we didn't really go for the Salah captain, but I think Haaland has such a strong floor that there's no reason to mess with him. And he got a lot of good minutes this week. 90 minutes effectively in two games, which is a bit of a shock. And Isak in my team is an interesting point. I'll talk about him, of course, when I talk about my transfer plans. But he was very exciting. He actually could have potentially got more points if Anthony Gordon actually, if he scored the early chance in the game versus Southampton. But Wilson actually came in and saved the day effectively for Newcastle, whereas Isak only got one assist. So that was a little bit depressing. But look, overall, fantastic week. I won 6 green arrows in a row, and it's been a fantastic run up to the end of the season. So I've just got to say I've been very, very lucky and very, very happy to do well from that point of view. As far as if I was to roll this week, this is exactly how my team would line up. I would be playing both Shaw and Trippier, so I don't have that benching dilemma there if I roll. I play Steele ahead of Kepa, and the reason why I play Steele ahead of Kepa is because the clean sheet odds are better. Brighton are playing at home. We think Steele is reasonably nailed now. I think the fear stage in terms of Steele maybe getting rotated out with Sanchez is gone for the short term until we see more mistakes, but he had a fantastic game. A lot of great saves made versus United, but I think also United probably gave him quite a few easy shots to save too. Trent, a super easy option to play. Salah as well. Rashford, Matoma, McAllister, all options that you kind of have to play. Grealish is an interesting one because he's one of those players who I would say is actually most in doubt to miss out in this game, even though he's actually nailed for City. So I would put him in a position where he's essential for Pep Guardiola and how he lines up this team, particularly on that left-hand side, and how he controls the game, even with KDB out as well. So that actually helps a lot because I think Grealish is one of those players who maintains possession very high in the field and actually gives that sort of stability that someone like a Bernardo Silva does, and that's why you can see Bernardo Silva featuring in so many of Pep's lineups no matter what, and that's part of what the fitness of Grealish and Bernardo Silva has proven out to show for Pep this season. As far as Grealish as well, the concern, of course, is simply the Real Madrid game with the Champions League. If you have 3 or 4 days of rest and you've played Grealish for 90 minutes on multiple game weeks in a row now, this could be the opportunity to rest someone like Grealish, and we'll talk about that in our transfer plans, what that could mean for my team setup, because I do have 1.2 million in the bank. As far as Haaland and Watkins, I don't really see myself moving out of these players. I know some people have contemplated going from Watkins to Alvarez. I'll talk about that transfer plan slightly, but it's not exactly ideal to go out of Watkins when he's playing for Wolves, particularly after we just saw Wolves concede 6 goals to Brighton. And not even just Brighton's A team, but really Brighton's B team from an attacking point of view. If we look at the transfer plans anyways, the first 2 options for me in my mind right now are going to be Zinchenko to a City defender. And hoping that we get some Man City news before the deadline is why I would play for these two moves, particularly Zinchenko to Stones or Diaz is going to be, I think, Diaz first as my preference, because it seems like Diaz is closer to being at full fitness, where Stones, we've seen multiple times this season where potentially he's actually the more attacking asset. He is the most lethal when it comes to historically scoring goals from these kind of great opportunities that a Mahrez or a KDB can create. But as I said, Stones is someone who is more has more propensity to being subbed off early. We've already seen it multiple times, whereas Diaz has been able to stay on the field for much longer, and he seems like he's getting the most minutes out of all defenders for a particular reason, as I think he is that sort of leader of the spine. And Ake, of course, coming back, he might just be eased in, right? Because he might just play that sort of first half versus Leeds, and then he could actually just be knocked off so that he's ready for the Real Madrid game. Very similar to how he was an early sub in the Fulham game. But now that you're so close to the Real Madrid game, I think tempting yourself with Ake doesn't feel like a good idea. So it's either between Stones or Diaz for me at this point. And I would need early team news to consider Stones, but I would prefer Diaz at this point in time. The second transfer would be interesting if I got early team news, and that would be if Grealish got benched based on my sort of suggestion and my inclination that it could happen, and with Foden getting a start, because I'm imagining now that Foden probably doesn't actually feature in Pep's ideal starting 11 versus Real Madrid. So this would be a perfect opportunity to bench Grealish potentially and get the most out of Foden in this game here. And of course, Big Sam is back in the Premier League, but Foden and City, I still think, are going to absolutely decimate a team like Leeds. And we've seen so many defensive lapses this season from Leeds. A lot of people also attacking that sort of left-hand side for Ayling. And I can't see how this is a bad idea, even if Foden was going to play left or right, really. I mean, even Furpro is someone that a lot of people have attacked this season. The fullbacks just don't really present much of a defensive base, really, for this Leeds team. So this would be a great opportunity, in my opinion, to go for someone like Foden. The fact that he actually got the same amount of points for Grealish with limited minutes was a little bit depressing, but that sort of deflected strike was really nice to see. And of course, it gave me a little bit of flavor for what it could be to move Grealish into Foden. So that's going to be my first two options. My next two options are going to be quite simple and also one that's going to be much more aggressive. So the options, of course, are either to roll. And what is the strength of rolling on this week? I think on Game Week 35, you could argue that maybe going for a City defender is a very high risk play because, as I said, they could be just simply subbed off at 45 minutes, particularly if they have a huge lead and Pep sees it as an opportunity to really just move on to the next game, prepare for Real Madrid, and have someone like Diaz or have someone like a Stones rested. And that could mean Laporte coming in, could even mean Akanji coming in because we saw him on the bench last week as well. And that could be a lot of problems, right? If I go for Foden, that would also be based on team news. But if I don't get team news, then I probably would be more inclined to go for a roll at this point. Because if I don't get team news, I would rather save up my transfers for what would be a very powerful Game Week 36 double transfer. That's another double game week there where maybe we can reassess what the situation is with all our Brighton assets. It could also help us reassess whether we really want to keep double Newcastle defense. So I've got Botman in my team, and Botman in my team is someone that hasn't been exciting, especially since I actually benched the only opportunity where he could have got more points than Trippier, which was last week. And I don't really see Botman being as much of an aerial threat as some of the other players, even Schär, who's actually shorter than him. And so that seems like a great opportunity to maybe reassess whether I'd like to change my Newcastle structure up. Maybe I don't play Grealish on 36, and instead I could actually look towards playing Joe Linton and putting him into my team, but that's of course quite aggressive. So we'll see what happens there. But a roll would give us more information on how to play out 36 optimally with our Newcastle double game week assets. It might even give me an interesting captaincy option that we haven't thought about previously. As far as Watkins and Alvarez, this is a move that I think a lot of people are thinking about, but this is a move that I would not recommend people to go for. Personally, for me, it's the worst move out of my transfer options available. I think Watkins just simply has a fantastic game. I already spoke about it previously about how you're getting to face this Wolves team who really were just completely split open by the Brighton B team, and I can't see it as a bad opportunity to go for Watkins, even though it is away from home, and we know that this Aston Villa team have been much better at home. I still think this is a great opportunity to play Watkins. And with Alvarez, of course, you still need early team news to actually even consider it as a good transfer. And you might have other priorities, right? If you get early team news, you might want to go for Foden elsewhere. You could go for a City defender, particularly if you're bored of playing for Trippier and you want to bench Trippier. So that's also potentially a better option than, for example, going out of Watkins on a prime fixture for himself. And Watkins is also actually a great option for Game Week 36. So keeping him in my team right now seems to make quite a bit of sense because I don't actually see myself taking Watkins out of my team in the short term. So that's going to be my Game Week 35 team selection video. As I said, it's going to be really dependent on what kind of news we get around the deadline. And I'm more inclined right now to roll if we don't get any deadline news. But as I said, options 1 and 2 are probably the most interesting. So if we quickly just go back to that, it's going to be Zinchenko out because Zinchenko looks depressing. I could even see some Kieran Tierney minutes coming in soon. And of course, if Grealish gets benched, then easy opportunity to stay in the 3-5-2 structure and simply just field Foden with the excess money that I have in the bank that would allow for that transfer to be accommodated for. And that's going to be my Game Week 35 team selection video, as I said. See you guys shortly.